All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris O'Hara from IK Multimedia, and we got a great Q&A coming up. I'm going to bring on Jason Sadites in just 1 second. But before I do, I just want to give you everybody a quick little overview of our tone partner collections, which Jason is one of our tone partners. And so just real quick, if you haven't already checked it out, there's a couple ways you can check out our the Tone Partner collections. One of them, which is on our ToneNet site. So if you navigate over to tone.net under the TONEX area, and you can select different tone partners. And as you can see here, I have Jason's page set up. There's a lot of great collections that he has on there, all really affordable. And you can use these collections on any version of TONEX software, including the free version, TONEX CS. So you can purchase a collection, load them in any software. You can use them on the TONEX Pedal as well. So a lot of great stuff on there. So definitely check it out. You can also check out these collections right inside TONEX software as well. So if you have the TONEX software and you select the collections area, and if you select that particular partner, it'll filter all that particular partner's collections. As you can see here, I have one of his collections loaded, and there's even a free tone model per collection. So definitely, take advantage of that. There's a lot of great free ones that you can load and use on TONEX software, as well as the pedal, which is really cool. If you're on the ToneNet side, so you just basically select this, it'll go turn on. And you can also tell that it says ToneNet here. This is all ToneNet. And then once you've purchased them, you can go into your local library. You can see works very similar. These are all the collections that I have purchased from Jason Sadites. So you can see they're all filtered there, and you can load them up into the software as well. So once you've purchased, one thing that sometimes people get a little confused, but once you've purchased one of these collections, you want to make sure that you go over into your account settings here and then select restore purchases, and it'll automatically download those collections there. So just a quick little rundown. Definitely check it out. There's a lot of great stuff on there. And as I mentioned, Jason's got a lot of great tone models to offer there. So without further ado, we got Jason is going to join us, and he's been a working musician for many years, and he's got a lot of great videos on his YouTube channel. So if you're not familiar with him, please go check it out. He really has a lot of stuff that can really help you with all different types of guitar gear, whether it's digital, analog, all that kind of stuff. He's got a lot of great experience, and I'm looking forward to chatting with them. And so definitely bring your questions. He's going to be giving away his entire collection on ToneNet to one lucky winner. So how to win, all you have to do is just make a comment in the comment section, and at the end of the stream, we're going to pick one lucky winner that will receive a serial for each one of the collections that are up on ToneNet. So go ahead and make sure you do that, and we'll announce the winner at the very end. So there you go. So without further ado, let's bring on Mr. Jason Sadites. How are you, Jason?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Excited to have you. I know I've been working with you on videos, for helping us with some of the IK stuff for a while, so it's been really great. You have a lot of knowledge and really good way to present information. So thank you for being a great partner with us. But I'd like to maybe start off with maybe tracing back to your roots a little bit. So, what started the whole guitar thing for you? What inspired you to pick up the instrument? What was the sort of the fire that got you addicted?
The first thing that really got me going was just the fact that one of my aunts had left her beat up old classical guitar that had a big hole in the side of the instrument, and that up one day and kind of just went with it, and against what I normally would do, stuck with it, because I didn't usually stick with anything back then. But I was 10, so I mean, I had an excuse. It was all right. But yeah, I kind of went with that. And then I think upon hearing Eddie Van Halen play the guitar solo on Beat It, that was it. I was sold, and at the time it was the untouchable solo that was impossible to recreate. But
Right. Yeah.
again,
It
when you're 10,
still is.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. So that kind of got me going with it, and I got a real passion for recording at a really early age. My dad had an old 1/8-inch reel-to-reel Sony recorded 2-track recorder that I quickly started to abuse and probably treat in ways it shouldn't have been treated, and figure that whole thing out. And yeah, it was fun, and it got me interested. And from there it just was went up or downhill, however you want to refer to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you take lessons, or are you more of a self-taught musician?
Pretty much 95% self-taught. I did go through a couple teachers that I never really lasted too long with. I just wasn't finding anybody who I felt. There was one guitar teacher I had who was just a great jazz player, and of course, when you're 10 or 11, that's just not the cool thing. And to this day, I kind of
Yeah.
kick myself for not sticking through with him, because he was such an incredible player. But like I said, try to convince a 10-year-old that they should be learning
Yeah.
Joe Pass lines, and it's probably not going to go over too well, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. So that's okay. So you started off early rock and roll. Anything? How did it progress? Like, how did you trace this a little bit? Get leading up to, let's say, your YouTube career, because I know you've been very active in the YouTube world for quite a long time. So
Yeah, I started teaching guitar very seriously with quite a few students when I turned 16 years old, which
yeah,
and it really took off. So I really kind of ran that for many years, all the while also playing, endless live shows with numerous bands. And
yeah,
but yeah, back in probably, I don't know, maybe 2007 or 8, 2008 maybe, I threw up a YouTube video just for no other reason than everybody was throwing up YouTube videos, right? And I really didn't work too hard at it until probably 6 or 7 years ago, when I started just doing videos of guitar solo covers, just challenging myself to learn like the most difficult solos I could as quickly as possible and throw a YouTube video up. And they started to get a little bit of attention.
hmm
But then what actually happened is folks were, at the time I'd already kind of moved away from real guitar amps, which I had owned many of over the years,
hmm
but I'd moved more into the realm of the digital guitar modeler. So what ended up happening once the videos started getting a little bit of attention, folks started reaching out and asking, how are you getting the tones? That tone is really cool. How did you get the tone for that? That sounds really close to the original. And as it goes. And then the requests came in, can you do instructional videos on how you're dialing these tones and how you're creating your tones, how you're using your delays, how you're, whatever it might be.
yeah,
And at the time, it was the most puzzling thing. I'm like, well, why would I do a video about that? Everybody knows that. That doesn't make any sense. I just sort of
yeah,
assumed, because something came naturally to me, that, well, everybody knows how to do this. But then you quickly learn that no, there's some people who just haven't had the opportunity to maybe experience all the same things or the same equipment, and they don't really know how to use it. And so I thought, oh, okay, what the heck, I'll do a couple of videos. And the videos did very well. Well, like, relatively speaking, at the time, I had a very small following at the time, but they did relatively well, and which kind of surprised me. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So many folks are telling me that it's helpful, so I might as well just kind of roll with it. And I did, and it kind of just kept building and building. And now I've been actually really enjoying, helping a lot more folks with various topics and whatever kind of comes up. Nice thing is you end up getting so many questions that, it gives you the ideas for new material. If 20 people ask you this question, then there's
right.
probably a need for a video for it. So you go ahead and you do that. And then you realize, wow, there was actually more than 20 people who that could help. Right. So that's pretty satisfying when when you hear back and get the feedback that it's helped so many folks.
Right. It can be complex. Are you a manual kind of guy, or are you like just dive in and just start figuring things out?
I am not against reading manuals, but I think a lot of stuff, after so many years of just working with so many different types of or pieces of equipment, and it kind of comes fairly naturally. So a lot of times I don't necessarily need to, but I always think it's a good idea to, because there's always, especially nowadays, right? Some of these devices are rather complex and rather deep, and there's a lot
Yeah.
there that you could easily miss if you don't dive in and take a closer look at it. Now, because I get to work with companies like yourselves, behind the scenes, sometimes I have access to stuff beforehand, so it's a little easier to, know a little bit more before, the general public has it, which is always kind of nice because you can be of more help to folks once you've kind of, been able to dive in with it a little bit beforehand. So
Yeah, yeah. So as technology started to improve, like you said, you started jumping into the sort of digital world. Obviously, you still have analog amps, tube amps and things like that. How, if you can, how would you say things have evolved? What do you think has been the number one thing that has improved over the time that you have been playing and using these digital products?
well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like something like TONEX, among others, I always will say in my videos that it's the best time to be alive as a guitar player, right? Because
Yeah,
the options are endless, and let's be honest, they're all very, very good. I know people online who will be very, start splitting hairs about things,
yeah,
but I find a lot of times when some of the folks that have the biggest opinions about it have never really tested things in a proper way to know whether there's as big a difference as they as they
yeah,
think there is. I've done a bunch of blind tests on my channel, and it almost always turns out being like nobody really knows what they're hearing at the
yeah,
end of the day. And then it, always becomes about, well, this feels better. It's not about how it sounds. That's how it feels. And I mean, of course there is some truth to it, but I think
yeah,
we're at a point now where, I mean, well, I'll put it this way. I have loads of tube amps, behind me, all over the place here, and none of them get taken out live. I mean, it's always going to be some digital solution that's working best for me at the time that's going to be used live. And I quite honestly, when I'm on stage playing, I'm not thinking like, oh, I, sure wish I had a real tube amp up here. It's just playing and like I would back in the days when we were using real tube amps on
yeah,
stage, right? So,
yeah.
so I think it's there, as at the risk of getting flamed by folks who think it's not, but I think it's there. We're in a really good spot to be able to, and I mean, look around, right? You look at touring acts all over, and they're using whatever digital modeling solution, and you go to these
Yeah,
shows and there's no telling what you're listening to anymore, right? It's
yeah. The amps are less and less on stage these days. There's a lot of these venues they want to keep the sound volume down, which a lot forces these musicians to kind of shift their thinking as far as gear, especially live use. So that's where things like TONEX are great, because it does give you that sort of solution for in the live environment and keep the sound guy happy.
100%. And the beautiful part about it is if you're in the studio recording, how, it's nothing to set up and capture that sound really quick so that you can have that same tone. Whether it's going to translate perfectly live or not is yet to be seen. But, TONEX has a great cue that, can really tweak things just beautifully and get things sort of massaged into place in different scenarios, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. So when TONEX was first when we first launched it, what were some of the early amps that you modeled just to kind of play around and experience and dive in? Do you remember?
the first amp that I modeled was my Rev Generator 100R. I'm actually an artist with the folks at Rev Amplification, some fellow Canadians. Wonderful, wonderful company making absolutely amazing amps. Love those guys. I actually have one of their new amps coming in really soon that I'm really excited about. So
Nice.
well, more on that later. Yeah, but really great folks. I dove in with that, and it really blew me away how TONEX just captured it beautifully. It was just perfect. It was, as I always do with anything new, I love to do like really detailed A/B tests, right? So
Hmm.
I got my, whole reamp solution set up, and I tracked some different guitars, reamped them through the real amp, capturing it with the exact same chain that TONEX that I used to capture the TONEX model. Went back, made sure I volume matched everything, A/B'd them, and I was instantly convinced. It didn't take me long to realize like this is doing what it's supposed to do. It sounds incredible, sounds amazing, and to have be able to do that right within your computer, that was what
Yeah.
kind of really got me excited.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you have anybody new to diving into this world of tone modeling, any quick little pointers? What would you, if you had to go back and do it all over again, is there anything that you would point out that they should to focus on
Yeah,
when
I
they're
mean,
capturing?
it came pretty natural to me just because I'd recorded so many guitar amps through the years. So to me, it was just the same as if I'm setting up to record a session, and I'm just going to follow that. And,
Yeah.
worked, it captured beautifully, right? I mean, for folks who maybe aren't used to that, um, or recording, everything in the signal chain is going to matter to some degree or not. And I mean,
Mhm.
depending who you talk to, you're going to get many, very strong opinions about what is the most important thing. Some folks will go on about how the mic preamp is the, utmost importance. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, it can be depend how you use it, how you set it up, how hard you're driving it. But to me, the really important thing is if you are starting with a good tone. I mean, that's the number one thing, right? Dial
Yeah.
the amp in so it sounds great. This is the step that so many people seem to forget. I have this amp. I have this amazing. I'm going to spend $4,000 on a mic preamp and $6,000 on a microphone, and it still sounds terrible. Yeah, well, yeah, because the amp, the source sounds awful, right? And so
Yeah.
dialing that amp in first to sound to sound good, and to also not only just sound good but to work to work in whatever situation is the end goal. Or is this for live, is this for studio, how's it going to sit in a mix? Having a ton of low end while you're sitting in a room playing might feel really good, but it's not going to work when you put it in the mix, or live. The mixing engineer, the front of house guy, is just going to be dialing all that out anyways, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
so dialing that in. Secondly, obviously using the proper mic, but even more so than the proper mic, the placement of the mic on the cabinet, right? That's
Yeah.
the one thing so many folks miss, and I would say that is really the bulk of the sound after dialing in the tone. You can dial in a great tone, place that microphone in correctly, and that great tone is gone all of a sudden,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
learning where to put it, how far away to put it. If you're using multiple mics, being careful to not have all sorts of phase issues and whatnot as well. So lots to think about there. So I mean, if you are new to it, it's not just about how good your mic is or how good your mic preamp is. It's really about knowing along every step of the way, placing that mic, and then, feeding it into a great mic preamp, but also having the gain on that preamp set properly, not driving it too hard on a clean sound where it's not going to be clean anymore. You're getting, characteristics from the preamp that aren't what you wanted. And, so there's so many things. And then obviously just, feeding that into your interface and watching gain staging and everything along the way. So there's a lot to think about there. So it seems simple, but I think the folks that have been successful at doing it are successful for a reason, because there is some know-how and some good ears behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's key, having the ears to know when you have it right, but also know how to change things as needed to get to where you're going. And that definitely takes, some experience to do that. Do you find yourself using certain, let's say, mic techniques, like maybe position, distance, that tend to be, common amongst the captures that you create?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have. I think anybody who's done anything for a long enough, enough times, or has enough experience at something, there are sort of just um, instinctual things you do, right? Or at
Yeah.
least instinctual starting points that usually get you 90% of the way there, versus somebody who has never done it. They're not going to have, they're just going to slap a mic anywhere and realize, like, wait, why doesn't this sound good? So I might start, with real typical, it's not like it's rocket science. I might end up on the cap edge, an inch or two back as a starting point, see how that sounds, and then know that if I move it back, I'm going to lose some bass, or if I move it more towards the center of the cone, it's going to get brighter, or angle it. So you just know these things, you give it a listen, and you can very quickly and intuitively places there. One thing I love, I'm a huge fan of ribbon mics, and anybody who watches my channel will know that too. So,
Mm-hmm.
you won't see the SM57 you pulled out of my mic locker too often. as great as amp as it is, or a mic as it is, and it's been used on countless classic tones, obviously. But I just really love, Royer Bayer dynamic ribbon mics, and I tend to gravitate towards those.
Yeah.
Although, hey, the mic I'm speaking into right now makes an absolutely incredible guitar mic too, and it does get taken down off of this stand every now and then and thrown on a guitar cab because it's such a killer
So
mic
it
too.
works,
So
yeah.
really depends. Really depends
Yeah.
on the amp, and it's just a matter of listening first. And that, that's another good point. Listen first. So many folks forget
Yeah.
to just listen first. Listen, hear what you're dealing with. Don't just make assumptions.
Yeah.
And then once you've listened, you can then go to maybe those instinctual places that you feel, oh, I think I know what this needs.
Yeah.
Then adjust from there, and usually you're off to the races in relatively little amount of time after you get a bit of experience with it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you find that ribbon mic translates more of what you hear in the room? Is that why you like to use it? Or does it add a
Just
certain
sounds
color? Yeah.
It sounds more natural to me. I don't even, and here we go with these audio
Yeah.
descriptive terms, which are so ridiculous and meaningless to anybody but the person saying them, right? But I mean, I
Right.
still
Right.
use them because we all do. But it just tends to sound more natural, right?
Yeah.
You kind of avoid maybe some of that harshness that sometimes, and that's the thing that
Hmm.
I find with the SM57 is like there always just seems to be that graininess that you know, it's even hard to EQ out without affecting some other part of the tone. And again,
Yeah.
that's just my opinion, right? I mean, who obviously other folks have used the 57, and it works great for them. And why? I don't know. It is what it is. Everybody's tastes are different. Everybody's way of working is different. So I mean,
Yeah.
by no means do I ever think that because I do one way that it's the only way to do it. There's obviously many ways, but yeah, just for me, putting a ribbon mic up, knowing where to place it, getting it there, everything just tends to work better to my ears, and I can get where I want to go faster, maybe, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Maybe if you can talk a little bit about what your typical setup would look like. So, whether it's the mic pre's, the mic itself. So walk us through maybe a typical capture for you that
Yeah,
you
well,
do.
once I get the amp dialed in, obviously, like I said, to get it to where I feel like it's sounding good in the room, then
Mhm.
it's moving on to the mic placement next, right? Which is then obviously going to have to go hand in hand with feeding that into a mic pre and making sure I'm not driving that too hard. I actually one mic preamp that I recently acquired, and I've owned many over the years. I used to have a very high end studio that I used to own that I was kind of all the gear was mine. I hosted it with a really good friend and partner of mine. And it was like I had very, very high end pre's and mics, and um, I kind of scaled that back later as I wasn't doing full bands. I didn't need, 16 or 20, mic pre's anymore. But I've owned everything from, Great River, Millennia Media, like some of the, top end mic pre's. And one of the ones I'm using lately is by a company called Cranbourne Audio. And
Mhm.
it's a 500 series. It's called
Mhm.
their Camden 500.
Mhm.
And what's very cool about it is they've designed a preamp there that can be ultra clean, kind of in along the lines of like a Millennium Media, no coloration. If you just want to capture a, beautiful acoustic guitar, you're kind of going to get what you put into it. It's not going to color it at all, which is sometimes great depending on the amp you're recording too. You don't want any color to it. But they've also worked in this circuit, not so much that you drive it harder like you would with a Neve style preamp.
Mhm.
But they just have this color control where you can kind of dial in how much color you want without having to drive the preamp harder. And I figured I would give that one a try, and I've been absolutely loving it. It almost ends up being my go-to preamp for everything,
Hmm.
simply because I can kind of get everything out of it. I can go in there and add as much or as little color as I want, or just go super clean with it. And I'm not constantly repatching to go to a million different preamps and whatnot. It's just kind of all there, and it always gives me what I want. So it's been a great addition to my mic pre's. And yeah, so I mean, going to that, making sure that's set, making sure the levels are going in the way they should, and that everything is working the way it should. And then I let TONEX do its thing, hit the button, and you know, give it its chance to work.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
And I got to say, I could probably at this point do without ever hearing the audio files again that TONEX spits out. But that's not to criticize, but I'm just,
Right.
I could,
Right.
we've alluded to that before too. It's
Yeah. When you've done as many captures that you have, it definitely it could be a little challenging to hear that one more time, I'm sure. So,
Yeah,
what's
especially at the volume that you have to listen to them at
right, right,
sometimes too.
yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah. I know you have a pretty tricked out computer, if I understand that correctly. I mean, do you have any? Because I know you run advanced captures on everything. Can you maybe
Yes.
speak a little bit to that? That because I know you get some really good performance out of your system.
Yeah, I would say 90% of that was fluke. I mean, I just kind of, when Tonex first came out, I did not have an NVIDIA uh, based GPU. So it was an AMD one. And obviously it just wasn't going to cut it. I mean, advanced times were like 9 hours or something like that. It was
Hmm.
just, so I realized, okay, well, this isn't going to happen unless, I immediately upgraded to oh good lord, which one do I have? The RTX 3070, I think.
Hmm.
36. I don't even quote me on that. Once I get those things and I put them in, I kind of just that information leaves my mind because I don't need to know it anymore.
I
But
think you have
uh,
a video on it is on your channel, don't you? Talking about it.
I probably do.
Yeah.
Yes, when I first got it. Yeah, because I did absolutely. I did a video back sort of comparing the two, but the 9 hour advanced training turned into about 15 to 15 and a half minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas a default capture was about an hour, I believe, back with the AMD. Now it's 3.5 minutes. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's quicker to do the training than it is to play the training files uh,
Yeah.
through Tonex. So, but even still, like with that card, um, I just added to my existing system, which is it's a fairly powerful system, but I don't think it's anything that, out of the ordinary. But I kind of did luck out that because I've heard other folks with the same card say that they're maybe getting half-hour training times and
Mm.
whatnot. So I don't know what the reasoning, if there's some settings in there that can speed it up or not.
Mm.
But yeah, I was pretty fortunate with that, and it's down to the point where why not do an advanced training at 15 minutes because it's really not that bad, right?
Yeah.
I can do a whole bundle of tones relatively quick and be very happy knowing that they were done at the advanced setting.
Yeah, cool, cool. I have another question, but just before I get to it, I just want to remind everybody that we are giving away Jason's entire catalog from ToneNet, his Tone Partner Collections. And so to win, we're going to pick somebody random. Just all you have to do is just add a comment, preferably a question for Jason. We'll get to some questions in a second. So we'll be choosing the winner at the end of this live stream. So definitely do that. Take advantage of it. And also to remind everyone, check out the collections. There's free tone models per each collection that you can download for free. So it's a great way to get your feet wet with all that stuff. So one question, Jason, that I have for you, because I know you've done videos on this, several videos on this, is gain staging, because that's been sometimes something that's talked a lot about, especially in the forums and things like that. What are your thoughts and what are your recommendations about getting the correct gain staging so you're getting basically the same tone, same gain level that you would if you were plugging directly into the amp?
I think that, and you and I have spoken about this in private numerous times. I think we kind of worked on a few things back when TONEX Pedal first came out about it. And that became a pretty polarizing topic for a while. And I even took some heat from some folks, but which was fine. But um, yeah, I mean, it's not, and the thing about any of it is it's not rocket science. TONEX software and TONEX Pedal are going to sound pretty much identical, indistinguishable from one another if you're hitting the front end with the same input level.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, I've done videos with it where nobody can tell the difference, right? So, and I mean, it really all comes down to how somebody is used to running the input level on their audio interface going into TONEX software. If
Yeah.
you run that very hot and then run the input level going into TONEX Pedal very low, or vice versa, then they're not going to sound the same. In the same way as it would be no different than saying, the tone doesn't sound the same when I turn the volume down on my guitar.
Right.
Of
Yeah.
course not, because you're now hitting the front of that tube amp, which is, a non-linear response, right? It's
Yeah.
going to react different depending on how much input we hit it with. It's going to be less saturated if you turn your guitar volume down. So same thing. If you run a very low input level on your audio interface and have your input gain cranked on the TONEX pedal, then they're not going to sound the same. But if so, having some knowledge about how the interfaces are set up, I tend to run my interface with about 11 to 12 dB of headroom. That allows me, to above 0 dBFS basically, right? So 0 dBu being about minus 11, minus 12, which is roughly equivalent to running the global input trim on TONEX pedal -2, -3, 0, thereabouts. So if you're used to running your input on your interface at that level, then set that for what your tone pedal is. Now, if you're used to turning the input level up to very close to where it's close to 0 dBFS, regardless of the guitar you're using on your audio interface, then you're going to want to run the global input trim louder. It's really that simple. And, I think a lot of folks misinterpreted what I was saying when talking about that, is that I was telling people how they needed to work. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. It was just an educational thing. And I always say this: if you're working in a manner that is working for you, then carry on. You don't need me or anybody else to tell you otherwise. That would be silly. Why would you change a successful means of working just because some dude on the internet told you should, right? So, but if you're struggling and things aren't working, then maybe these are the places to look, right? So I think it's just a matter of figuring out how you're running things. I believe I did a video on it. TONEX pedal as an interface runs with about 8 dB of headroom. So, I mean, if that's how your audio interface is set, then at 0 dB on your input trim, then you're going to have the same thing. It's just a matter of sorting that out and knowing what you're doing on your interface so that you can go back and match that up on your TONEX pedal. And then it's going to be a non-issue. Now, the other important thing is that a lot of folks don't realize is, and I've seen this question so many times, they'll say, I wish we had a way of storing per preset the input trim. But they don't realize that they do. There is a way, and it's called gain knob, right? And you can set your global input at 0, leave it alone, and then just adjust your gain per tone model or per preset appropriately. Save it, and then when you recall it via the pedal or MIDI or whatever you're doing, you're done. And you can have that change from preset to preset and no other thought involved. I've always been of that opinion that, you shouldn't be having to go into global settings every 5 minutes. You should be able to kind of set global settings, walk away and do it somewhere else. And you can with TONEX. And a lot of people just have to realize that you can set that gain control, save it per preset, and it will be recalled and everything's good, And I think the more folks tend to realize that, the nicer workflow it's going to be, because the issue is with TONEX, because you're dealing with so many folks that are using different audio interfaces, which are all going to be slightly different. And that's nobody's fault. That's just the way it is. It's almost impossible to get it to always match without a little bit of, thought and foresight of knowing, where am I set on my audio interface? Where should I be set on my TONEX pedal? But they do sound identical if they're all set the same. So that's the important point, I think, to take away from it. So the magic numbers are in there somewhere. It's just going to be up to everybody to kind of figure out what they are. And hopefully the videos I have up will help them to dial those in.
Yeah. I sometimes even have 2 of the same tone models with the gain set differently for the 2 different style of guitars, for example, because the pickup output obviously affects that. And it's just like you would if you're running into a tube amp. Sometimes when you grab a single coil guitar, you want it to sound a little fuller, so you turn on a boost pedal, right? So
100%.
Yeah, very similar. Sometimes I run that on my TONEX pedal to
you could almost think of that gain control as a built-in potential clean boost if you want, and it's really all it's going to do for you. You want an extra 10 dB of gain going into the front of it? Turn up that gain control by 2 or 3 points, and there you go, you're done, right? So you could set 2 presets up, right? One with the gain at the default setting, and one, instead of at 5, have it set to 7.5, and there you go. Boom, you got your boost, right, for your solos or whatever. Gonna get a little more saturation out of the tone model and hit it a little harder, right? So yeah. But I think that's the one thing that a lot of folks, is a real misconception about that gain control and how that can be used to such great effect.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to get to some questions in just a second. So I'm seeing a bunch of really good ones. So we'll definitely pop those up on the screen and discuss those. But real quick before I do, let's talk a little bit about your guitars, because I think that's, obviously it's it's the second half of this whole puzzle, so to speak. So, yeah, I believe you have an endorsement, right?
Yeah, I'm an artist with Vigier guitars out of
Right.
France. Really
Yeah.
wonderful company, makes some beautiful instruments. Yeah.
Yeah. What's unique about that guitar that you like that maybe you can hype a little bit for us?
I met them at the last NAMM show I was at, which was 2020,
Hmm.
before the unspeakable things happened. Um, and we don't want to go into that on YouTube, I don't think. So yeah, I met them there, and I mean, I'd always been aware of them. Great players like Sean Lane,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
who was just mind-blowingly amazing.
Yeah.
Bumblefoot actually
Yeah.
has become somewhat of a friend since I've been with Vigier,
Nice.
and I did a live stream with Ron on my channel. Wonderful, wonderful player,
Yeah.
wonderful person, really, real sweetheart of a guy, and wonderful player, beyond anything anybody can fathom. But so I'd always been aware of them. But then when I kind of messed around, the first thing that got me interested was the fretless guitar. I was really interested in
Yeah.
messing with that. It's not for the faint of heart.
I was gonna say you're a
Uh,
brave
inter-
person to go down that.
Oh, well, the interesting story behind that was back at the NAMM show. I talked to the folks at Vigier, and they were interested in doing something. So the first guitar I got from them was the Surfretter, which is their fretless guitar. And my goal was that when it came in, I wanted to give myself 3 days over the weekend to record a track with it without really allowing myself too much time to practice. So I chose a real simple song to do, was the Attitude song by Steve Vai,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and do a fretless version. So there's actually a version of that on my YouTube channel and up on Spotify of me doing Steve Vai's The Attitude song on fretless guitar, which shaved about 15 years off of my life, I think, trying to pull that off. But it did happen, and I had my really good friend Marco Minnemann play drums on that, and Tony Levin played Chapman stick on it. So I had
Nice.
a couple decent players play on it, and it turned out pretty cool. Uh, but yeah, so the fretless was amazing. But then I realized, getting that fretless, just how cool a lot of the little things they were doing. They seem to have gone over the traditional electric guitar and found all the weaknesses and kind of corrected it. One thing I love is there's no truss rod in them. Now a lot of folks
Hmm.
don't like that because they're like, how do you adjust things and whatnot? But they
Yeah.
do 90 percent maple, 10% carbon fiber neck.
Uh-huh.
So the necks don't move. They come in, they're set up, and living up in Canada in a northern climate, which goes from, summertime to winter, where you have like 80-degree swings in the weather and the humidity is all over the map. Since I've got those guitars, I've never had to do a neck. Obviously, you can't do a neck adjustment, but I've never had to set up a guitar again. It just, you
Yeah.
take them wherever in out. They're always solid.
Yeah.
They're absolutely incredible. That's one of my favorite features on them. But just a lot of other little things. The strap locks are actually machined screws, which are brass inserts inside the body, so you're not dealing with wood ever like tearing out of the
Right.
body and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
Little tiny things like that looking at guitar you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Using locking guitar inputs, your chord isn't just going to come out without you pressing a button and unlocking it. Little things
Yeah.
like that. Man, they've really thought this through, and I just absolutely love the guitars. I don't know how many I have here now. I probably have five or six, maybe six of them, I think, including
Nice.
got a Strat, a couple Super Strats, a couple Les Paul styles, P90 style pickups, the fretless. I think that's it. Yeah, but yeah, so I love those. I also have other guitars. Obviously, I have some Gibsons and some Surs and whatnot. But
Yeah.
the VAs probably get the thing about it is, when doing a tone demo of, let's say, a Marshall style tone, a lot of times people want to see a Les Paul in your hand and not something that's like a Les Paul. You know what I mean? Not
Right.
that
Yeah.
not that it's makes that big of a difference, but it does, because somebody wants to see that tone being played with a Les Paul. So,
Right. Right. Yeah. Do they make?
I can they make a Les Paul style guitar, but it's their
Yeah.
take on it. So sometimes people just want to see that name on the headstock and know that they're hearing a Les Paul, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think it's important to have, I have a 335, I have a Les Paul, I have an SG, like the real deal ones, right? And so sometimes I think you have to use them just because that's what somebody wants to see, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right. Yeah. What do they make all their electronics and their pickups and everything in that, or do they outsource that?
They don't actually. No, they're all
Mm-hmm.
third party. So I have guitars with them with DiMarzio pickups.
Mm-hmm.
I have some Duncans in one. I have some lesser known companies like Amber pickups out of Germany, which are really beautiful pickups. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of nice because I got to try some pickups that I really kind of more boutique style pickups that I never really probably would have been aware of or even tried. And it's quite nice stuff.
Yeah, nice, nice,
Yeah.
cool. Let me let's see here. Let's see if we can pull up a few questions here from some of these. I see a couple in here. They're really good ones. Give me 1 second. Uh, Here's a nice comment here. One, you got a fan here. Somebody's got several packs.
Oh, nice. I recognize the name. Hi, hello, Alejandro. Yes, we've spoken in private, I believe. Yes, thank you so much for the kind words. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Here's another one that comes up quite a bit. Do you see no effects loop as a problem? I assume they're meaning with the TONEX pedal. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It's never been a problem for me. I can see it potentially being a problem if somebody wanted, delay while monitoring with headphones. Right, that could be one scenario that I could see. I think
Yeah.
when we were discussing TONEX Pedal before it came out, one of the first things I asked you is there gonna be an effects loop? Not even so much that I was worried about it, but I kind of foresaw that others might think that this was gonna be an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if you think of the Tonex pedal as your amp, right? I mean, which it can be. Obviously, there's reverb and compression and whatnot in there. Then, I mean, you can run effects before and after it just by putting them before and after it. So, I mean, in that case, I don't think it's a big issue, but I guess there are a few situations that some folks that wanted to do very specific things might find it a little. It would have been nice to have it, but I
Yeah.
don't think it's a deal breaker or anything. But like I said, if you're sitting playing with headphones and you want to have some delay before your reverb or something like that, then I guess you know, or the delay being monitored from the
Right.
within TONEX coming
TONEX.
out through the headphones, then there's an issue there. But
Yeah. It's tricky because when you have built-in reverb, then it does, you know, spark the question of, where can I put my delay in there if you're using it. But if you're not, if you're using your own reverb unit, then it's not generally not an issue just to run everything after the pedal. You can choose the
I,
order
I have a
of it.
feeling I have a feeling most folks are probably not using the TONEX built-in reverb as their main reverb. I think it's a really nice thing to have because it can, just makes that tone model sort of sound great or more well-rounded or full or whatever you want to call it, right? Just more depth to it, let's say.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling anybody putting together a pedal board's probably going to have some other reverb pedal after the fact that then it kind of isn't an issue because you can put your delay before that if you want or whatever else,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, definitely. What about IRs? Do you ever experiment with third party stuff, or do you create your own? What's your thoughts on that?
I've created many actually. Yeah, I usually when I do any bundles that I've done myself that are DI captures, I
Mm-hmm.
usually will capture an IR of the same system to at least have something to offer folks, right? As adding to that DI capture.
Mm-hmm.
I and this is just purely opinion on my part. I tend to gravitate towards the amp cab captures rather than the DI captures. I know online so many folks really love the DI captures and adding whatever IR they have. I personally I find the whole IR rabbit hole can just be a little bit crazy at times where you have to, go through like
Right.
50 different IRs of,
Right.
well, this was this microphone at this angle, and then we moved it a few inches, and then we did, and it's like,
Right.
trying to, I'd rather personally, and my use of Tonex is always grabbing one of my own amp cab captures and being done with it, knowing it was captured very close to exactly how I would want it. And then I'd probably just more likely grab the EQ on TONEX and add, either using the presence or depth control, or the really, really, and a lot of folks I don't realize just how incredible the high and low shelf EQ can be on there. Get into
Yeah.
those advanced parameters, start tweaking.
Yeah.
And it's not, the other big thing is it's not going to destroy the tone model. It's not going to make the tone model a different tone model. A lot of folks have to realize that if you record in a big studio and you record a guitar track of, just a head and cabinet mic'd up, 99% of the time that's going to be EQ'd at some point before the mix is done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't change the fact that you still used a Marshall amp, and it didn't, it's just shaped it to the purpose at the time. That mix needed less low end. Okay, dial some low end out. We can do that on TONEX too. Doesn't destroy the tone model, right? And some people have it set in their mind that once a tone model is captured, that's it. It's over. Nobody's allowed to touch it. Otherwise, the integrity of the tone model is destroyed. And it couldn't be further from the truth, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Let's see a couple more, just a couple good props here. So you got, hey Jason, just wanted to thank you again for helping me pair the TONEX with my Helix. They sound great together and are a match made in heaven. I do think I agree with this person. Yeah, I know you.
100%. Yeah, Drew. I've spoken to Drew in private before too. Hi, Drew. Thank you so much for the kind words. And yeah, the Helix or HX Stomp and TONEX are absolutely incredible together. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that I'm a big Helix guy as well. And the two of them just work beautifully together. One of the great things with Helix and TONEX is the MIDI capabilities and the MIDI control for controlling TONEX too. A lot of people don't realize Helix is an absolutely incredible MIDI controller with their command center and whatnot too. So it's really incredible how you could integrate the two together. And TONEX is amazing for being able to accept MIDI so easily as well. I did a video on way early on, I think, where I was actually using the Morningstar, either the MC8 or MC6. There's another, that's another company I absolutely love. Those guys have become good friends of mine. The folks at Morningstar Engineering, they make just the most incredible MIDI controllers. Just fabulous, fabulous product.
Yeah,
Pairs beautifully with TONEX as well.
I've been eyeing one of those myself, and I think I need to get one. Yeah,
you will not be disappointed in it. Their editor is just incredible. The ease of creating a patch and the ability to just copy and paste this. It's once you get your head around it, and it's really not that far a stretch to get your head around. Really, really incredible unit, and really, really wonderful folks too.
Yeah, awesome. Let's see a couple more quick ones here. We got somebody that loves TONEX. Great, it's always great to hear people enjoying the TONEX pedal software. Let's see. Just going through a few things here. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see. This is a good one. Here we go. Best use these gate and compressor feature.
Okay, so
yeah.
Do we have about 6 hours to go into this?
I know, it's a little bit of a...
So what's really interesting, it's a pretty timely question. Literally about 45 minutes, I don't know if you noticed that, Chris, but literally about 45 minutes before coming on the live stream, I released volume 6 or episode 6 of the Beginner's Guide to TONEX, which is all out noise gate in depth. So there's a video up on my channel that I dive really deep into the noise gate, because I mean, there's only 3 parameters, but they are all interactive and they work together. So, threshold, I think the depth control is one that a lot of folks don't realize is as powerful as it can be. If you have your depth on 0, it doesn't matter where your threshold is, you're still going to have some noise coming through.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's designed. Depth on about half, you're going to get rid of that. If you go up more on the depth, it's going to potentially start affecting the tone, even if your threshold is set correctly. So I would say, instead of going on and on in this video about it, beyond saying that, I would go on and go check out the video I just put out, and I think it'll answer all the questions. Compression is deeper than, we would have time here. Are we running it pre? Are we running it post? The one big thing I could say about that is, and a lot of folks, I've done videos on it, but a lot of folks still don't seem to understand that, depending on whether we have it set pre or post, if you have that set in post, which is how I tend to run it 90% of the time,
Yeah.
it's working off the, potentially distorted sound, saturated sound of the amp. So it's going to react very different. You're not going to have the same transients that you're going to have from a straight guitar, but also anything you change before the compressor, changing the model volume is going to hit the front of the compressor harder, which is going to give you more compression, which is going to really take away a lot of the boost you would get from, let's say, boosting the model volume. It's probably not going to get much louder. It's just going to be more squashed, and that may or may not be what you want. It's not a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's a matter of awareness and just knowing that that's what's happening. So if you're running your compressor in post, don't use your model volume to turn the volume up and down. Use the compressor gain as your main volume control, so that nothing is coming after it other than the reverb, which is a linear thing anyways. It's not going to be affected regardless of how much input you put into it, right? So so I mean, everything's important there. Attack time, how much gain reduction. One of my favorite things that you guys added after the fact was the gain reduction meter, which I think was an absolute necessity. Just to know, when is this compressor kicking in? How much is it kicking in? I tend to like to run my compressors in post, a fairly fast attack time, and I set it so that the threshold is just kissing the sound, right? Just, on my hardest, loudest sounds, it's just sort of kicking in and maybe not always working. That's kind of my preference. Gives it a little bit of squish to it, and I kind of tend to prefer that. But then again, if I was playing in a funk band with a super clean sound, then I'm going to put it in pre. I'm going to set the attack fast. I'm going to want more. So it's such a tough question, simply because there's so many scenarios and so many possibilities for how you can use it, depending on the scenario.
Yeah, there's no one way to use it. There really isn't, and like you said, depending on the style, what you want to get out of the compressor. Because you're right, if you do put it, let's say, like sometimes I see people put it in front and they're not getting the same type of response out of the amp as they would like. It's because it's limiting the dynamic range, so you're not going to get that nice from edge of breakup to a little more saturated as you pick harder. So then putting it after it, then it gives you a little bit more of that dynamic quality back. But then you have to worry about issues like you mentioned. If you turn it up before the compressor, it is going to hit the compressor harder, and you're going to get more of that squash, which is also brings up that noise floor, which could be come to a problem.
And also with the compressor before the tone model, turning that makeup gain up is going to hit the front of the amp in a different way, which again is going to affect your saturation amount. That you're going to be either, it can end up being more like a boost pedal again, right? Just a more evened out boost pedal, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I saw there was a good question about, let's see, where was it? It was about the capture device. Where was that? Give me 1 second. I saw that. I know somebody had a question about it. Can you use the audio interface with TONEX Pedal when capturing an amp, or just the TONEX capture device? So I don't know, Jason, I know you have a lot. I can definitely field this question, but I know you have a lot of experience with the TONEX capture. Can you kind of maybe run through, how you use the capture and what sort of purpose it serves in the whole sort of loop of?
Got that sitting right here next to me off screen. I'm touching it at the moment. I use it all the time. It's become my main reamp box. I absolutely love the reamp section on it, because it kind of just gives you exactly what you put into it back out of it, which I love, with the ability to turn that up and down, obviously. But so the first part of that question, can you use any audio interface with TONEX Pedal? Well, I don't really know if I'm understanding, because if you're creating a capture, TONEX Pedal is not really part of that process. So that's one thing that folks should probably realize. TONEX Pedal as an audio interface is not going to allow you to be able to make captures. You're going to need an audio interface with the appropriate numbers of inputs and outputs, right? So, but then the TONEX capture box is great because it becomes your reamp device. Line out of your audio interface into the reamp section of the TONEX capture box. Out of that to get the proper impedance going into your guitar amp. So it's as much like plugging your guitar amp in as possible. And then, I mean, if you're doing an amp cab capture, that's where the TONEX capture device ends in that scenario. You don't need it for anything else.
Yep.
But if you're a DI capture, and I can't stress enough, you need a load on your amp. It is not a load box. That's one really important thing for folks to realize. But yeah, you can take a tap off of your speaker output, send that into TONEX capture, and then back out to your cab as a load. And then you have a separate line output on TONEX capture to send to your audio interface to capture just the DI, so that the cab isn't going to be a part of that anymore. So, I mean, it's as simple a box as you can get. You have ground lifts, which are absolutely necessary in a lot of cases and scenarios, but it just does everything it's supposed to do. And since you guys sent that to me, it's been used over and over and over again. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. It's a great tool. And just so everybody knows that you don't need the capture box to create tone models, you can actually use any reamp box. We recommend the TONEX one because there's basically 5 different types of captures that you can create. And what's great about the TONEX capture box, it allows you to do all those 5 different types of captures if you want. So, but like I said, you don't need it to run a capture. It's just kind of one of those recommended things. It makes things a lot easier. Plus, you can use it as just a standard reamp box in your studio. So if you want to use it for other purposes, it definitely is a great tool to have in your studio. And it does come with the TONEX software too, so you get a twofer out of it. So definitely.
And I have used it as a reamp box many times beyond making tone models, and in fact, I had 2 other TONEX boxes I no longer have because TONEX boxes, reamp boxes that I no longer even have because it's replaced them. It's been fabulous.
Yeah. There's a question here. Let's see. I don't see it up on my thing, so I can't bring it up just yet. Maybe there's a delay, but there's a good question. It's like, if you don't use the reverb in the pedal, do the stereo outs make any difference? So just so everybody knows that the TONEX it's a mono signal. The stereo is reverb, but the actual tone model is mono. So when you turn off the stereo, it's the reverb, it's going to just be a dual mono output on that. So what is your Jason? What would be your current setup like if you had to play live? Would it be like what would you pair? What would your pedal board look like?
I have a number of them, which is always a nice problem to have. Yeah. For years, I was obviously I was using a Helix HX Stomp board. I do have one board I use for one band now that is an HX Stomp, very small board paired up with one of the new Eventide H90 pedals, which are pretty incredible pedals, pretty nice stuff. Yeah. But I have all the X Gear pedals that you guys make, which quite honestly are the one thing I really love about the Eventide H90 is the drop tuning stuff you can do on it, the polyphonic pitch shifting, which it's probably the best out there. Yeah. The HX Stomp does have that as well, but it's very, very CPU intensive. And, you put one of those on an HX Stomp and you barely can have an amp after that. Right. It's, so that's a bit of a drawback. So that's why I went with the H90, but I'm absolutely loving the X Gear pedals. They're incredible. So, I'm actually just working on getting that board together, the TONEX pedal with the 3 X Gear pedals, the reverb delay and the modulation as another board, so that I can take that out for live as well. Yeah. So fabulous setup. Awesome. Yeah. And of course a Morningstar MIDI controller, which just completes that and kind of the brains of the operation, shall we say.
Yeah, definitely. We'll jump back to some more questions, but I do want to cover your collections because you have a lot of really cool collections offered on the ToneNet marketplace. So I'm going to pivot real quick. Let me remove this question here. So Jason, so what do you think if someone's new to your catalog? Is there maybe a couple of collections, 2 or 3, that you would kind of recommend as your like starter, maybe your starter pack?
Everybody must buy all of them. No, I'm
Of
just, sorry, I'm
course.
just kidding. No, I'm just going. I'm totally
Besides that, you got to
joking.
buy them all.
Well, it's a tough question because what I'm trying to do with it, with any tone models that I'm making available, is really cover a wide spectrum of tones.
Yeah.
We know that this is a highly subjective topic, right?
Yeah.
What is a good tone for you may not be for me, and vice versa. I'm of the opinion there's no such thing as really truly bad tone. It's just misplaced tone or tone used in the wrong particular scenario. We've
Yeah.
heard Jeff Beck, plug straight into a board with that sort of awful impedance mismatch distortion, but it's perfect because it's Jeff Beck playing it in a certain song, right?
Right. Yeah.
Old Steely Dan recordings with Skunk Baxter playing on, Countdown to Ecstasy, and it's this grainy, overdriven tone that's almost, farting out, but I couldn't imagine the song with any other tone other than that,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've always been of that kind of school of thought that it has to just be the right tone for the scenario, but there isn't necessarily such thing as bad tone. There's more misplaced tone. So what I'm trying to do is offer everything from, gorgeous clean tones to great edge of breakup tones, and really trying to take the best of each amp. As you can see there. So like one of the newest bundles I put out was the Mars 74X, which is a hand-wired Marshall 1974X amp I just got recently,
Mm-hmm.
which is from their hand-wired series. Absolutely beautiful amp, but it's not
Nice.
going to do high gain. And if you want it to have any gain, you better get your earplugs out because this thing's going to be, bloody loud, right? So that's the challenge of capturing these. Is when I'm capturing them, I'm not even for 90% of them, I'm not using any sort of attenuator. I'm just opening them up and letting them rip,
Going
right?
right. Yeah.
So it's interesting, but it makes a difference. And but that would be the perfect amp for somebody who's going after that vintagey vibe, right? But then on the other end of the spectrum, I have the Taco Supreme, which is the Friedman Pink Taco version 2 amp,
Yeah.
more high gain. It's not going to be for the same person who wants that tone from the Marshall 1974, let's say, or
Mm-hmm.
the Rev Generator is going to be a different thing, right? So to say that there's 3 collections that are just going to work, it's really again going to be down to what a person needs, I guess. And if you ask me on different days, which are my favorite, you're going to get a different answer every day. So it depends on my mood, and it depends on what guitar I'm playing and what I'm playing.
Right.
But I think with the collections, I'm really trying to cover a wide gamut of different amps. I have everything from Matchless Chieftain to this Marshall to various different styles of Marshalls, the
Yeah.
GM 900, the 800s, the Plexis, of a Soldano style, the Silver Jubilee, a Dr. ZZ Rec, which is a real favorite
That
amp
one
of mine in
sounds
collection.
great. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
just what an amp to plug into. And
Yeah.
TONEX cap, that was a capture I did fairly early on, and I remember getting a lot of great comments about it as well. And it just feels great and sounds wonderful. And
Yeah. Now, do you have any new amps that you're really excited about bringing to the?
are you referring to the one I was talking to you about beforehand?
Yeah.
I just recently took delivery of a Two Rock Studio Signature head and cab, and I have to say it didn't disappoint. And I chose the Studio Signature because of there's a gain structure switch on the back of it, and it kind of goes between like Fender blackface kind of a vibe to more of just a standard, what they call the Two Rock kind of vibe. And then there's a middle position, which is almost like dumbly and a little bit higher gain.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, the switches on the front, the bright and the deep and the mid. And it's just really quite versatile. And I think a lot of folks look at that amp and think maybe it would just be kind of a one trick pony sort of thing. And it's anything but. It's a really deep amp, and it does all those sounds absolutely beautifully. Not that it matters for TONEX, great reverb built into it, which obviously you're not going to be keeping on while you're capturing anything with it. But yeah, what a beautiful addition. So there may or may not be something coming to the Tone Partners soon. That's all I'll say about that. But and
Yeah.
probably people are guessing it's more to the May side. But
I can't wait to hear that one. That sounds like a great amp.
yeah,
What's
it's
is it a
really killer.
6L6 on that one?
You know what? You caught me off guard there. What is that one? That is my problem right now is I've got too many amps on the go here, and I can't keep track of what's in all of them.
It's a good
Um,
problem to have.
yeah, right. It's been a good stretch here for amps, but let me just see here. It's 6L6. Yeah, that's a
Nice.
6L6 based amp.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I like the 6L6s sound. They sound nice.
Yeah, it's
Let,
funny. Of all the amps I have in the studio, I that's one that I was kind of missing is a lot of 6L6 bass. There's quite a few EL84s and EL34s and whatnot, but the yeah, 6L6 is nice.
Cool. So just want to remind everybody, so anybody who's just joined us or in the last maybe 20 minutes or so, so Jason is, we're going to be giving away his entire catalog to one lucky winner. So if you haven't already made a comment, preferably a question for us, go ahead and do that, because then you'll be entered to possibly win his entire collection of these amps that he's currently talking about. So definitely do that. We're going to pick the winner pretty soon, so we're going to close it out in a few minutes. But before we do close it out, Jason, do you have any sort of, I don't know, predictions about where guitar gear is going to go?
Oh, good Lord. I have no idea. What I don't know if I want to get into that. That's, the funny thing is I've, as deep as I am, or as seemingly deep as I am into gear and guitars and amps, and I'm actually very simple when it comes to all this stuff. And I'm kind of easily satisfied personally. Like once I get some couple tones to play a night with, I try to keep my life as simple as possible. And I've all my goal has always been to, no matter what I'm given tone wise in a scenario, I want to figure out how I'm going to make it work rather than be on the lookout for something that's going to make it work. If that makes any sense, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
um, I really kind of feel that we've been in a place now where things are pretty much as good as it's going to get. Maybe workflow things, things that are for convenience. But as far as sounds and tones, I'm pretty happy. Uh, as I said before, I was a long time Helix user, which I think is a wonderful, amazing product, which I love. But it doesn't capture amps, and I love the idea of capturing amps. Being somebody who came from a generation where I played tube amps live and I worked in studios with tube amps. And so this idea now of being able to capture those rather than just relying on an existing amp model is something that's a big interest to me. So, and like I said, I've done these A/B tests, TONEX versus the real thing, the same track reamp through it. And I'm very satisfied knowing that it sounds as good as it can. And I know others have opinions about it, but um, it feels great, sounds great, works great in the mix, works great out of the mix, works great in many scenarios, plays well with others, shall we say. And,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm a happy camper as far as where gear is. I'm sure at some point something will come out that's pretty innovative and fascinating, but I don't know. I tend to focus more on what I'm working with at the moment rather than worrying too much about what's going to happen. So
Yeah. It's getting really, it's impressive where technology has come a long way, especially in the guitar side of things. And I'm excited, even working at IK, we got some things, that we're working on that are really exciting. So, lots of great stuff, in the future. So, let's see. So Jason, I want to thank you, but before we, close it out, we do need to pick a winner. So do you have anybody, if you can see maybe our chat there, if there's anybody you feel like could be a good winner for your entire catalog? So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll hopefully have more of these live streams with the Tone Partners. And as you can see from hearing from Jason that, he's definitely have a lot of experience and really goes through and creates these captures. You know, he spends a lot of time creating them. So if you're interested in purchasing his collection, I guarantee you won't be disappointed. He's got some great stuff. So, and I can see many of you already purchased a few of them, which was just great. So.
Well, how about we go with Trickster? He seems to be a pretty active participant. And what do we think? Is that is that how we're doing this?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So we'll reach out, we'll connect with him, and we'll get him the correct you know, some serials for the collection. So, at any rate,
Awesome.
Jason, thanks so much for joining us here and for us to get a chance to pick your brain. Where can people find you? Can you give your some socials, your YouTube channel, all that stuff?
Yeah, so I obviously have my own website, which is just my last name.com, SADITES.com. I have pretty active on Facebook as far as the guitar stuff goes. Again, just under my name, and obviously my YouTube channel, which I think you can just search up my name on there and it'll probably be the first thing that pops up, or or one of them. It's out there. So yeah, that's basically. I'm Instagram too. I don't know if I'm that active on there. There ends up just being too many of these things to keep up with. It's just
well,
I try my best.
Your YouTube channel is great, and if you're not haven't seen his YouTube channel, Jason's always got videos coming out. So, I mean, it's worth subscribing. It's almost like every day you got a new video out on a really good topic. So, I've learned a lot from just watching your videos. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I try to keep busy on there, and that's probably the best place to find me, and the place that I'm most active. And if you want to see what I'm up to, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason, for joining us, and thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll reach out to the winner. And yeah, stay tuned for more good stuff. Thanks everyone for tuning in.